You never think about what you might find on the other side of a door. Most people go their whole lives never knowing. But on one cold night in a quiet neighborhood, a young man made a desperate decision that would take him somewhere no one should ever go. He broke into what he thought was an empty house. He was wrong. What he walked into was not a home, it was a hunting ground. And the man who lived there had been waiting for someone exactly like him. This is the story of how one act of desperation crossed paths with one of the most dangerous human beings alive, and how a night that was supposed to last a few minutes somehow lasted a lifetime. Stay with us, because this story will not let you go. It begins the way so many dark stories begin, with a man who had run out of options. His name was Daniel Mercer, 23 years old, living in a mid-sized city in the American Midwest, where the factories had closed and the jobs had dried up, and the future felt like a door that kept getting smaller every year. Daniel was not a career criminal. He had no record, no history of violence, no dark past that people would later point to and say, well, of course it ended this way. He was just a young man who owed money he could not pay, who had a mother with medical bills stacking up on the kitchen table on Calloway Drive for 3 days, a 2-story colonial with white shutters, a detached garage, and a yard that was neat but not too neat, the kind of house where a working professional might live, someone who traveled for work, someone who was probably not home. The lights had been off every evening for 3 nights in a row. No cars in the driveway, no movement in the windows. He had asked around quietly, and someone in the neighborhood had mentioned that the man who lived there, a quiet guy, kept to himself, was often away on business for weeks at a time. Everything pointed to an empty house. Everything told Daniel this was the safe play. He was wrong about all of it. The man who lived at that address was named Raymond Cole. He was 41 years old, worked in logistics, drove a plain gray sedan, and had lived on Calloway Drive for just under 4 years. Neighbors described him as polite, forgettable, the kind of man who waved from the driveway and remembered your name at Christmas, but never quite let you inside. No one had ever been invited into Raymond Cole's home. No one had ever seen the inside. The few neighbors who had tried to drop by unannounced said Raymond always appeared at the door within seconds, always just wide enough to block the view inside, always with a calm smile and a reason why now was not a good time. At the time, no one thought much of it. Private people are everywhere. You do not assume the worst about a man just because he likes his space. But Raymond Cole was not simply a private man. He was, as investigators would later determine, a meticulous and methodical killer who had been operating for at least 7 years across 3 states, leaving behind a trail of missing persons that no one had yet connected into a single story. The FBI would later describe his case as one of the most chilling examples of a functional, organized offender hiding in plain sight. He paid his taxes, he maintained his lawn, he smiled at children in the grocery store. And then he came home, and he closed the door, and he became something else entirely. On the night of November 14th, Daniel Mercer waited until nearly 2 in the morning. He wore dark clothing, carried a small flashlight, a screwdriver, and a bag he planned to fill with whatever he could quickly convert to cash. Electronics, mostly, maybe jewelry. In and out in 15 minutes. That was the plan. He approached the house from the backyard, moving carefully through the dead leaves, stepping over a low fence, pressing himself against the wall of the house and listening. Silence, complete and total silence. He tried the back door first, locked. He moved to a side window and worked the latch the way someone had once shown him when he was 17 and thought it was a useful thing to know. It gave with a soft click that sounded, in the stillness of the night, impossibly loud. He paused. Nothing moved. He pushed the window up and climbed inside. The first thing Daniel noticed was the smell. Not a bad smell exactly, more like the absence of normal smells. No food, no laundry, no coffee, none of the comfortable domestic odors that fill a lived-in home. Just a faint chemical sharpness beneath something earthier that he could not name and did not want to. He stood in what appeared to be a kitchen and let his eyes adjust. The flashlight moved across the counters. Everything was clean, obsessively clean. Not the clean of someone who had simply tidied up before a trip. Something deeper, something scrubbed. He moved into the hallway. The house was laid out simply. Living room to the left, stairs directly ahead, a closed door beneath the stairs. It was the closed door that stopped him. There was a padlock on it, a heavy, serious padlock on the interior door of a private home. Daniel had broken into a few places before in his life, small things, never anything like this, but something about that padlock made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up in a way he could not explain and did not try to. He should have left then. Any reasonable part of his brain was telling him to leave, but he was 23 and broke and stubborn, and he told himself it was probably just a storage room, probably nothing, and he moved on. He went upstairs. The bedroom was sparse, almost militaristically so, a bed made with sharp corners, a nightstand with nothing on it but a glass of water. He opened the closet, clothes arranged by color, shoes lined up with geometric precision, nothing that looked valuable. He checked the dresser, found cash, which he took without thinking, slipping it into his bag. He moved to the second bedroom. This one was locked. He jiggled the handle, put his shoulder gently against the door, felt it give slightly, and that was enough. He used the screwdriver on the frame, and the door swung open. What he saw inside stopped him completely. The room was not a bedroom. It was a workspace. A large corkboard covered one wall, covered with photographs and printed pages and handwritten notes connected by colored strings. A workbench ran along another wall, covered with tools. Not typical tools. Daniel could not identify most of them. A heavy desk in the corner held a laptop and 3 stacked binders, each one labeled with a year. He stepped closer to the corkboard. The photographs were of people, ordinary people, men and women, different ages, captured in what looked like candid shots, the kind you take when someone doesn't know they're being photographed. Beneath each photograph was a name, a date, and a series of notes in small, careful handwriting. Daniel's mouth dried. He did not understand everything he was looking at, but he understood enough. He backed towards the door, and then the light came on in the hallway. Raymond Cole had not been away on business. He had been in the house the entire time, in the basement, which had no windows and needed no light that could be seen from the street. He had heard Daniel climb through the window. He had heard every step. Raymond Cole was not surprised. He was prepared. Later, Daniel would struggle to describe the moment he turned and saw the man standing in the hallway. He would say that Raymond did not look like a monster. He looked like an accountant. Average height, average build, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, wearing a plain gray sweater. He was holding a cup of coffee. He looked at Daniel the way you look at something you expected to arrive but are mildly annoyed came at an inconvenient hour. He said nothing. He just looked. And Daniel, to his own amazement, spoke first. He said something like, "I am sorry, I have the wrong house," which was so absurd under the circumstances that it would have been funny in any other context. Raymond smiled. It was the smile, Daniel would later say, that was the most terrifying thing. Not angry, not predatory, just calm, entirely, completely calm. The smile of someone who had been in unusual situations before and had always come out on the right side of them. He stepped into the doorway of the room. He looked at the corkboard, then back at Daniel, and the smile did not change. He said very quietly that Daniel had seen things he was not supposed to see. He said it the way you might say the weather is turning, matter of fact, without particular emotion. What happened next is something Daniel has described in detail to investigators, therapists, and eventually in a book he wrote several years later. Raymond moved towards the desk, not towards Daniel, towards the desk, and that small movement, that tiny shift in direction, was what broke the paralysis in Daniel's legs. He ran. He didn't think about it. His body made the decision before his mind caught up. He hit the door frame hard with his shoulder and spun into the hallway and moved towards the stairs with the kind of speed that only pure terror can produce. He heard Raymond behind him, not running, walking, as if there were no particular rush, as if the outcome were already settled in his mind. Daniel hit the stairs and took them 3 at a time and crashed into the front door and clawed at the deadbolt and got it open and was outside and running across the lawn in the cold November air before he had processed any of it consciously. He ran 4 blocks before he stopped. He was shaking so badly he couldn't hold his phone. He called 911. He was hyperventilating so hard the dispatcher asked him to slow down 3 times before she could understand what he was saying. He told her he had broken into a house. He told her what he saw. He told her the address. And then he sat on the cold sidewalk under a streetlight and waited. The police response was initially skeptical. A young man who had broken into a home was now calling to report that the homeowner was dangerous. It had the shape of a story designed to shift blame. 2 officers arrived, looked at Daniel, checked the address,